Hello, I'm Super Orange Cat. Here I am today with a nice little video idea I've been kind of had kicking around in my head for a little while. But I finally got the impetus to make this video due to a tweet, well, technically someone tweeting to Jason DeMarco, where he talked about Blade Runner, which, if you don't know, is a Toonami program exclusively produced by William Street that will be airing in 2021. Not 2020, 2021. And the reason why I had to specify that is there's been a lot of hype around this. I think it got out sometime last year or the year before that Toonami was making a show based on the classic IP Blade Runner. If you don't know Blade Runner, it was a very popular movie in the 1980s. Basically, it was this like trying to be like this futuristic about like it's a lot to explain. Like if I'm just explaining the concept of Blade Runner, I would be here for 2 hours at least. And I don't have that time. So basically, it's a very popular sci-fi thing from the 80s. It got rebooted into a movie last year, which, if I recall correctly, was like surprisingly well received, which added even more hype to this idea that Adult Swim has now, I guess, on Toonami. So the reason why I had to mention this and the reason why this tweet is relevant is I and like the title right here says it, I don't think Toonami really understands the concept of hype. Now, when you think of hype and you say Toonami, what's the most hype thing Toonami has done since it's come back on Adult Swim? I think it's been far and away when they had the 2 sequels of Fooly Cooly. Now, this is definitely not the first time I've mentioned these sequels on my channel. I've made plenty of videos about them, and if you follow me, you know that I generally have kind of a lukewarm at best reception of them. And part of that is the fact how much it was hyped going into it. 2 years before it aired, like the sequels aired in the summer and fall of 2018, and they were announced, I want to say like the spring of 2016. So more than 2 years in advance, they were announced by Adult Swim, who came out and said, "Oh, hey, by the way, production IG and us, yeah, we're going in halvesies on this project. We're gonna have 12 new episodes of fully cooling material." And the internet, at least the anime part of the internet, just absolutely exploded. Like people couldn't believe it. A lot of people were very excited for it at the time. I was very like I at that point I hadn't even watched the original Fully Cool yet, but I had heard hype about it and I was getting a little excited too. And I eventually ended up watching Fully Cooley, I think like early 2018, like months before the sequels came out, and it was as good as everyone said. The original Fully Cooley might be one of the best anime of all time. Please watch it if you haven't. Just gonna bring it out there right now. And like I said, and here's the thing about hype. It's very hard to keep up and very hard to consistently keep it up, especially doing so without inflating everyone's expectations. So when you have a show like the Fully Cooley sequels that were hyped up continuously for 2 years, like people like 2016 were talking about it, 2017 people were talking about it, and of course 2018 people were talking about it. And give credit to Adult Swim and Toonami, they were making sure everyone remembered that they were coming to the block, especially when 2018 came around. In the spring of 2018, they brought Fully Cooley back onto the block, put it in like a very prime slot in the block. It got insanely good numbers for being a 15-year-old rerun at that point. Well, the dub was 15 years old. The anime it was like 18 years old. Because remember, back around that time, around the turn of the millennium, anime wasn't nearly as big as it is now. So sometimes anime took like 2, 3 years to dub, which was the case with Fully Cooley. And unlike today, where you get nearly instantaneous dubbing, which is pretty impressive, and I think a good sign of where anime has gone in the past couple of decades. Again, back to the hype machine, and for having great ratings for being an old rerun at that point. So it looked like it's a slam dunk. Things are going to be amazing. And again, Adult Swim really let you remember that there are going to be 2 sequels and they were coming in 2018. Because if you look like their YouTube channel, they post like trailers, multiple trailers. Like they posted a combined trailer for Progressive and Alternative. They released a separate trailer for Progressive. They released a separate trailer for Alternative. They had exclusives. They had an exclusive video of The Pillows, who, if you don't know who they are, they're the band that composed the soundtrack of the original Fully Cooley, and they came back for the soundtracks of both Progressive and Alternative. They had it with voice acting talent. And there's some pretty interesting details in it, especially Carrie Walgren, who was the voice actor for Haruko Harahara, talking about how this was like her first voice acting role, and her basically reflecting on how it's become probably the most pivotal and the most like the biggest role of her career because of how much Fully Cooley turned into this massive cult success. I found that to be pretty interesting. And like I said, Toonami went all out for the progressive, all out for alternative. And then when it came around, like I said, and with 2 years of hyping, everyone had these insane expectations of progressive, insane expectations for alternative, albeit it started going a little south on April Fool's Day 2018. If you don't know, that was a rare time in which April Fool's Day fell on a Saturday, so it was Toonami night. And to this day, it's been the only time that Toonami has had April Fool's Day. And Adult Swim has this tradition that on April Fool's Day, they do something a little weird, their schedule. Like, I remember one year they just added fart noises to it. One year they had like Aqua Teen Hunger Force episodes, but did it like it was Fish Center, like very notable ones. One year, for some reason, they hyped up there was going to be something, but nothing happened. And the one time we had it on Saturday, at midnight when it became April 1st, the first episode of Fully Cooley Alternative aired in Japanese, so the subbed, and everyone honestly hated it. And that's the thing, and that's because, and I don't think it was because the alternative was that bad. I didn't watch it actually that night. I actually tuned in afterwards when Mind Game was playing, which by the way is an amazing movie. And you had and it's like, and I watched the first episode alternative when it aired in September with the rest of its episodes. I thought it was a very solid episode, but everyone's expectations at that point had been so through the roof that disappointment had become inevitable. And I think that led to a lot of the negative reception around, especially progressive, because that unfortunately was the first one up on the chopping block right afterwards. And that's for good reason. Progressive has a lot of issues as a show, as an anime, as an adaptation of, as a sequel of Fooly Cooley. There is a lot of issues there. And I could make an hour-long video just about the issues in it, but again, I don't have time for that. So onward. So now then you have alternative air. And although alternative was definitely much better and progressive, it actually was a good anime if you look at it outside of the Fully Cooley lens. If you just look at it as a nice 6 episode series of events, I thought it was pretty decent. But people just didn't tune in for it. The ratings for it were abysmal. It was one of the bigger drop offs the block had ever had from like Dragon Ball to something because they decided to put it immediately after Dragon Ball for some weird reason, just to try to get more viewers to watch it. But no one wanted to watch Fully Cooley at that point because honestly, at that point, you had nearly a full year of Fully Cooley in some form beaming on Adult Swim, being on Toonami, and it kind of gotten tiring, especially considering that all the Fully Cooley we've gotten in the history of Fully Cooley, we've only gotten 18 episodes. The 6 the original, 6 from progressive, and 6 from alternative. And when you rerun stuff like that, people just get tired of it. People get tired of the hype. They get tired of the characters. They get tired of the concepts and the jokes from it. And ultimately, I think that just led to the demise of the hype because you can only hype up something for so long before people get tired of it. And you can only hype things up for so long without people getting inflated expectations of it. Now, on to what we have now. There's 2 Adult Swim projects in the works that have built up a lot of hype. You have Uzumaki, which is airing sometime in 2020. My guess is that it airs in October to coincide more with Halloween. And you have Blade Runner, which will be debuting sometime in 2021. And the thing about Uzumaki is, I think they're making every single mistake they made with Fully Cooley all over again. Because again, when it got announced, everyone exploded with excitement because you have Junji Ito, the man of horror in Japan, like a big name. Ask anyone who's into cinema, actually anyone who's into anime in Japan, they know who this guy is. He's a massive name, and to have him have this crossover on Adult Swim to serve as like this big crossover moment of Japanese horror possibly being something remotely mainstream in the United States looked insanely impressive. And I was into it too. Although one of my worst moments on my channel was when I was misinformed and stated it had something to do with Naruto because it was called Uzumaki. I was horribly wrong. I had to make an apology video about that moment I would not like to relive personally, but and again, I was excited for it. It really seems like a great idea, great concept. One of the things I secretly love is horror, especially like horror, like more subtle horror. And although there's some obvious horror elements in Uzumaki from the little bits I've seen, from what I've heard about it, I think a lot of it, the atmosphere looks so haunting. And I really love the concept of the atmosphere being like this really dark, not dramatic, but like it's evil, but you can't exactly point out why it's evil. Which is why I like stuff like analog horror too, like YouTube channels like Local 58, Minerva Alliance, Gemini Home Video, which I think are some of the best content YouTube has out right now. But again, back to Uzumaki, and like I said about Fooly Cooley, Adult Swim let you know Fooly Cooley was coming. And they are letting you know Uzumaki is coming. And I mentioned like the YouTube videos they put out, like how they talked about the pillows, how they had Kari Walgren come in. They've already had videos of Junji Ito, videos about the production behind it, and they are hyping this up. And when you hype things up, everyone's expectations get very massive, like it already is. Some people are thinking, like I said, like how I did, this is going to be the seminal moment of Japanese horror, like very high expectations like that, to the point where even if Uzumaki ends up being pretty good, if it's not the best thing ever made, some people are going to get disappointed, and that's going to become the narrative of it, you know. And ultimately, I like it, but I'm going to keep my expectations a little low because I don't want to get disappointed. And you can say the same thing about Blade Runner, although they haven't quite gotten to the tier yet. A lot of people are talking about this a future adaptation online, like in this tweet I already mentioned, but I don't know. I have a feeling it's going to be disappointing too. And might not even be because of how bad it is. It might be good, but everyone's going to be so hyped up for it that they're going to think it's going to do poorly. When people think it does poorly, they don't stream it. They don't buy the episodes on the iTunes store. However, people buy this shit anymore. And again, you don't make money. And that's the problem with the Fully Cooley sequels, because even had Jason DeMarco at one point come out and like kind of subtly acknowledge that Fully Cooley did not do as well as he expected on the block. And I feel like Toonami, feel like Adult Swim is setting themselves up for this type of situation again. So what do you guys think? What are your opinions on Blade Runner, on Uzumaki? Do you think they're going to be that good? Do you think these are going to be like amazing seminal moments for Japanese animation on in the United States? Leave your opinions down below. I love reading them. If you like this content, if you want more Toonami content like this, please like this video. Please subscribe and hit that notification button. I'm Super Warge Cat, and that is all.